Joseph Zerilli was a notorious mob boss, born in Italy in 1897, who became one of the most powerful figures in Detroit's organized crime scene. He ran an extensive criminal empire that included extortion, gambling, prostitution, narcotics, and labor racketeering. Despite his nefarious reputation, Zerilli managed to avoid lengthy prison sentences due to his skillful use of bribery and intimidation tactics. He operated from behind the scenes, rarely drawing attention to himself, but his influence was felt throughout the city. His story is one of power, corruption, and the dark underbelly of American society. Joseph Zerilli was born on December 10, 1897, to Anthony and Rosalie Zerilli in Terracini, Sicily. He came to the United States in 1914 at the age of 17, settling in Detroit along with other Italian immigrants, many of them particularly from Sicily, and began working as a pick-and-shovel laborer. Now, in the early 1920s, the Jewish gangsters of the Purple Gang and their smaller rivals, such as the Little Jewish Navy, controlled nearly all of Detroit. Alcohol was the game of the Detroit criminal underworld, and the Purples were out to control it. Because of their skill at collaborating with mafiosi, the Purples brought Yanni LaCavoli and his gunners from St. Louis to Detroit during the gang wars. Around this time, Zerilli joined the Purples in a number of illegal endeavors that would eventually lead to the development of an illegal enterprise that generated $150 million in annual profits. Prior to his success, he collaborated with mobster Gaspar Milazzo, also known as Gaspare Lombardo, who had also done business with the Purples quite successfully. In 1911, Gaspar Milazzo arrived in the U.S. and settled in Brooklyn, New York. Upon his arrival, he made a name for himself in the Italian underworld and the Sicilian community of Brooklyn. In the early to mid-1920s, he started working with Salvatore Catlinati and developed a close working relationship and alliance with the powerful mafia boss. Catlinati passed away at home in Grosse Pointe on February 14, 1930, at the age of 35 from complications related to pneumonia. In the meantime, Zerilli rose to the top as the Purples left the local rackets for positions that were much more lucrative in the national syndicate's gambling operations. The Zerilli crime family, also known as the Detroit Combination or the Detroit Partnership, was founded when Zerilli took control of and oversaw the East Side Mob, along with William Black Bill Taco and Angelo Melli. The Detroit Italian underworld had gone through its own bloody power struggles in the middle to late 1910s, and after the early 1930 death of Salvatore Catlinati, the organization was once more torn apart by rivalry and conflict. The alliance and truce that Catlinati and Milazzo helped to establish over the previous few years were now beginning to fall apart, and one of the most explosive disputes that had already resulted in some violence was between the East Side and West Side mobs. Angelo Melli received a message from West Side mob leader Chet Lemaire requesting a meeting to discuss mafia affairs and perhaps put an end to the feud. Melli, however, was a shrewd man and understood that meeting with the shady Lemaire was dangerous. The Detroit Mafia held Gaspar Milazzo in such high regard and was well aware of his mediation abilities, so Melli reasoned that he could send Milazzo in his place and the latter would not take it personally because he would understand how Milazzo would be seen as the only person who could mediate this dispute. Milazzo agreed when Melli asked him to meet with Lemaire at the meeting. However, what Milazzo did not know was that the powerful New York Mafia boss, Joe Masseria, had started to support Chet Lemaire in his attempt to take over the Detroit Mafia. In place of Angelo Melli and his associates, Gaspar the Peacemaker Milazzo and his right-hand man and driver, Sam Perino, attended the meeting on May 31, 1930, at the Verner Highway Fish Market in Detroit. While waiting for Lemaire or his representatives, Milazzo and Perino took their seats and started eating lunch. Without saying a word, two assailants jumped out and opened fire with shotgun blasts, killing Milazzo instantly and critically wounding Parino in the chest, abdomen, and arm, but died shortly after. Gaspar Milazzo was 43 years old. While some crime historians and organized crime experts theorize that Joe the Boss Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano, a Milazzo associate, engaged in the bloody Castellammarese War in New York City as a result of Milazzo's murder. Others contest this, pointing out that 3 months before Milazzo's murder, close Maranzano ally and associate Gaetano Tommy Reina was killed in New York at Masseria's direction. The commission was established in 1931 by Lucky Luciano of New York and initially included 7 family bosses, including the leaders of the 5 families of New York, as well as Al Capone, the leader of the Chicago outfit, and Stefano Mabedino, head of the Buffalo, New York family. The crime families from Philadelphia, led by Angelo Bruno, and Detroit, led by Zerilli, were admitted to the commission following a commission meeting in 1956. Zerilli, unlike some mafiosi, did not turn down prostitution, as he wanted anything that generated revenue. As a resident of Detroit, he posed as a baker and businessman while living in a $500,000 home. He received fines for such egregious offenses as speeding and carrying a concealed weapon twice in his lifetime. For a while, Zerilli was one of the National Commission's 2 members who was not from New York. Because he respected the rights of other bosses to rule their own territories, he consistently pushed for Detroit to have the same authority. He, however, never played a role in the national organization of crime. In his early 70s, Zerilli retired from his position as head of the crime family business and successfully installed his son, Tony Zerilli, as his successor, something that other dons had attempted and failed to do. No one wanted to mess with what Joe Zerilli said would work, because he was highly respected as a godfather. However, in 1975, Joe Zerilli was forced to take control once more, in part due to the fact that his son had been given a 4-year sentence for plotting to acquire a covert interest in a Las Vegas casino, and also the extremely problematic case of Teamsters boss Jimmy Hoffa, which was also on the docket. Hoffa was starting to become headstrong. As much as any mafioso, Zerilli, through his top lieutenant Tony Giacalone, told the labor leader after his release from prison to calm down, that everyone was happy with Frank Fitzsimmons running the Teamsters. Unfortunately, Hoffa didn't stop there. Jimmy Hoffa vanished on July 30, 1975, and most probably murdered. According to conventional wisdom, the likely attackers are New Jersey mafioso Tony Provenzano and Pennsylvania upstate New York boss Russ Bufalino. However, Giacalone, Zerilli's lieutenant, was the person Hoffa was supposed to meet outside a Detroit area restaurant. Nothing in Detroit was ever done by other mafiosi without his approval because Joseph Zerilli insisted on maintaining control of his turf. He had to be asked to approve any murders committed in Detroit, as well as deal with them. Joseph Zerilli passed away on October 30, 1977, from natural causes. Jack Talco, his nephew, was appointed to lead the organization, and Tony Zerilli was to be the underboss who reported to Talco after he was released from prison. Nove Talco, a member of the Detroit crime syndicate and the grandson of Joseph Zerilli, agreed to testify against his cousin Jack Talco, the current leader of the Detroit crime syndicate, in April 2000. Since the family's founding in 1921, Nove Talco was the first member of the Detroit crime family to cooperate with the authorities.